Hysteria in Maranello as Michael Schumacher crossed the Suzuka finish line to bring the driver's title back to Ferrari after a 20-year absence. Now he sets off in pursuit of Ferrari's first back-to-back driver's title in 50 years. Not many people have managed a double in any car. Mika Hakkinen is the most recent, and that sets the scene for a season that should be a rare treat. Williams showed its new car in a typically workmanlike launch at Silverstone. The team had an amazing season in 2000, and though both BMW and Jenson Button made their Formula One debuts side by side, the FW22 was pretty much on the pace from the word go, and so was Button. With stalwart Ralf Schumacher there to provide stability, the team ended the season third in the Constructors' Championship, which not many of us would have bet on. But even as Frank Williams was planning to replace Button with Montoya, BMW was planning to replace its first Formula One engine with another. Design work on this year's power plant started ahead of last year's Australian Grand Prix because BMW acknowledged that the unit they'd got might win occasional races, but not a championship. Maybe that was the way Frank Williams and Patrick Head viewed Jenson Button, although once again they'd been planning ahead, and it's widely accepted that the decision to go with Montoya for this season was made well in advance of the discovery that Button was as good as he is.
I think we've got two remarkably competitive drivers. One is clearly a little bit of an unknown, the Grand Prix car, but I don't think there's much doubt in this team about what he can do. I don't suppose they'll get on marvellously, but that's not what's important. What's important is what they do on the track.
Two good drivers, though one of them is an unknown in a Formula One car, and of course a new car that's been built to the new regulations, which makes that an unknown as well.
It's still in very early stages. The car you saw today is not going to be the car which you will see in Melbourne. There are still some changes going to happen. But I'm relatively confident that we have a reasonably good car, but how good it is at the end of the day, I'll find out in Melbourne.
Most media attention is bound to focus on Montoya, though, the gruff Colombian who won the kart title and the Indy 500 at the first time of asking, and who apparently feels talented enough not to make concessions or allowances towards his teammates, thus putting the pressure on himself to perform well straight away.
And it's very difficult to say what's going to happen through the season or anything. You know, I'm trying as hard as I can to do my best. If you really think about it, you have to. You know, for me, I'm like brand new here as well, so I got to learn the tracks, learn the car, learn the engine, the tire, and so far it seems things are going on quite well.
After a surprisingly good year in 2000, the team is now under pressure as well to perform at a similar level in a season where the goalposts have very definitely been moved. New aerodynamic regulations, new crash test regulations, new electronics regulations on the way by mid-season, and the appearance of a second tyre manufacturer, Michelin, with whom the team has opted to run this year, all making it difficult to make predictions or set targets.
Well, easy answer, finish every race. Both cars, brilliant pit stops, great strategy, and maybe a win or two if those grey cars and red cars make a mistake.
But for Williams, like all the other teams who've signed off on new cars, the die is cast and they can only wait to see how well they perform in Melbourne. Or in Williams' case, Silverstone the same afternoon. It was Williams who established this as the pattern for serious Formula One launches. No frills, no dancing girls, just a racing car that works today. Within a few hours of the wraps coming off, the FW23 was ready to go, and once again Ralf Schumacher was the driver who got to sample it first, although it's certainly not the first time he's tried the new for 2001 engine. Smaller, lighter and more powerful than its predecessor, the new unit should give the FW23 a useful boost, and it will be useful in a season where the regulations have made the biggest change for several years. Aside from the bigger and stronger side pods to provide better driver protection and the need for stronger roll bars, the reduction in rear wing surface via the limit on the number of elements it contains, plus the raising of the front wing, means a reduction in overall downforce that most teams have been working in the wind tunnel to recover. Naturally, they've all been saying that they're pleased with their own results, but won't know how they compare to other people's work until Melbourne. Roughly speaking, a modern Formula One car generates its own weight in downforce at about 100 miles an hour, and that's what the rules have been trying to rob them of, and designers have been trying to claw back in the wind tunnel. The changes were introduced in anticipation that the arrival of Michelin would start a technology war that would increase grip and thereby reduce lap times. So the rule changes were a sort of deliberate handicap. It will be more noticeable at some circuits than others, places like Monaco, where the cars normally run lots of wing, and there will be a burst of aerodynamic development during the year, so that by the end of the season we can expect that lap times will be pretty much the same as they were at the same point last year. Bridgestone has had the Formula One tyre market to itself for the final season, and this year will see a return to the tyre wars of old. It's a strange thing to say that it's only a couple of years since Goodyear left, but already it seems like a lifetime, and Goodyear themselves had spent so long in Formula One that the two names became synonymous. But Bridgestone has always known they wouldn't be alone forever, and indeed probably welcomed the development spur of racetrack competition. But make no mistake, this will be war. The secrets of Formula One tyres are closely guarded, and every single Bridgestone carcass has its own identity and its own passport that follows it everywhere. Every carcass is returned to the factory, inspected, tested and destroyed, so that none might fall into the hands of potential rivals. Even photographs of unmounted tyres are banned because you can tell so much about a tyre's construction by looking inside it. And Bridgestone is the only maker to have run grooved tyres under the current rules.
First of all, we have lots of one more groove on the front, so we lose the contact patch on the front. That reduces the front grip, and also it affects on the wear on the tyre. It makes much harder on the tyre wear, so we need to use slightly harder rubber on the tyre. That makes reduce the tyre grip as well.
Michelin's return is unlikely to be as difficult as Bridgestone's debut. Apart from its current successes in various arenas that includes the World Rally Championship and Motorcycle Grand Prix, Michelin has a long and impressive history in Formula One, which goes way back to the 70s. The statistics speak well for themselves. 112 Grand Prix, 59 wins, which is close enough to 50% not to worry about, and no less than 16 complete sweeps of the podium. 16 doubles as well, and 57 pole positions, almost 50% once more. 59 fastest laps, 36 Grand Slams, and 5 World Championships. 2 of those were constructors' crowns with Ferrari and McLaren, and 3 drivers' titles with Lauda in '84, Piquet in '83, and this man, Scheckter, in 1979. A double title season for Michelin and Ferrari. Michelin has long been associated with Renault, the manufacturer it first supplied when it came to Formula One in 1977, and with Ferrari, with whom it won its first world title just 2 years after it made its racetrack debut in the sport. In no time at all, the teams were queuing up to be on Michelin rubber, and at its height the French maker was kitting out 6 teams and winning races and titles on a regular basis. And remember too that Michelin provided that rubber during the turbo era, when the power outputs rose to ferocious heights and tyres were called upon to perform deeds almost as heroic as the drivers. And now Michelin is back, and the test programme is already well advanced. Initial tests with a BMW Williams took place at the BMW Miramas test track in the south of France, and later on they ran a Stuart Ford at Barcelona and Estoril as the company prepared for its first race at Melbourne, hardly 12 months after making the first official announcement of its return.
Michelin returned to Formula One this season after an absence of almost 20 years. Their last Formula One world champion was Jody Scheckter in 1979, and they returned to break the Bridgestone monopoly that has reigned for the last 2 seasons. The French tyre manufacturer will be represented by 4 teams during the 2001 season. Jaguar, Benetton, Prost and BMW Williams, all of whom were present at the launch and all of whom hope to benefit from Michelin's expertise in the course of the coming seasons to try and gain an advantage over the rest.
We know the people, we know the system, we know how Formula One works, how it used to work. It's a little bit different, but product-wise, it's absolutely nothing to compare. It's the rule have changed, the presence of the grooves of the tire changed completely, the design of the tires, and the cars have changed also the circuit.
It has been known for some time that the return was to happen, and development and testing has been with BMW Williams.
All the companies behind, and all the technology, the knowledge, the obviously simulation programs and everything is behind us for this program in Formula One. So the first part is bringing to Formula One the potential of the company.
Jaguar are one of the teams which has made the commitment to run with Michelin. New team boss Bobby Rahal will be looking towards the French manufacturer to help turn the team's fortunes.
I am a huge believer in Michelin and their capability, and so I think that while there may be some bad days in the beginning days of this of the professional side of the relationship in terms of performance, comparatively speaking, I think that ultimately it'll be a great advantage for us.
Like the other 3 teams on Michelin rubber this year, Bobby Rahal sees this very much in terms of a technical partnership.
We've been trying to work very hard with Pierre Pesquet and his staff to help them develop a very good tire as quickly as possible. And, you know, as I say, I just really enjoy working with them. They're great professionals, and we feel very strongly that they're going to be a very important ally for us in the future.
Renault and Michelin have a very
Benetton are back with former engine partner Renault this year, providing the power, and Flavio Briatore is also convinced of the long-term and important benefit of a partnership with tyre giant Michelin.
We started in 2002 basically with Renault, but what we want to have long-term partnership with the technical people. And we figured out Michelin was the way to go for the next 5 years. We signed a 5-year deal between Michelin and Renault. We are very happy to have this kind of adventure together, and we try doing our best. And this year is new from Michelin, is new from our engine. I mean, it's the year we don't expect so much, but we expect to learn for 2002.
With the new BMW Williams FW23 now in the middle of serious testing and at a crucial time in its development, Frank Williams was another in Paris at the launch to confirm his team's commitment to a technical partnership. They do have possibly a little more knowledge than the other 3 teams, having been involved with development right from the start. An important position to be in, and one that could pay future dividends.
Well, Michelin perform a very important function, as the tyres do, on all Grand Prix cars. And to have a technical partnership with Michelin is very significant, it's very important. It's an important day today for Michelin to announce formally their activities for the next few years. And since we're a partner, we're there with them, delighted to be so.
It's no real surprise with the French connection to find Prost and Michelin racing together this season. Alain Prost says it's more than just pure convenience.
The choice is really made because of the technical reason, the scientific approach of the Formula One and the tires, I mean the product. And with the experience, I know that it can't be wrong. You know, it can take a little bit of time because it's too easy to say, you know, they can come and win the first race. But very, very confident about the future, about medium term, long term, and that's why I wanted to be with them.
After so long away from this top-level form of competition, success is unlikely to be immediate. Current Formula One rules put strict limits on testing, and much has changed since Michelin last raced in Formula One.
10 years down the road, Eddie Jordan's dreams of a Formula One World Championship took a step closer this week with the launch of the Honda-powered EJ11. Ironically, the partnership between Jordan Grand Prix and the Honda factory comes on the heels of a season in which Jordan's fortunes suffered a reversal and the team finished 6th in the Constructors' Championship, 3 points behind the Works Honda-powered BAR. Now both Jordan and BAR share the latest version of Honda's V10, and Honda says it will pursue a policy of complete neutrality between the two teams, even though it remains committed to development of an integrated design featuring a complete chassis and engine package with BAR. But with stability in its driver lineup plus Ricardo Zonta in a test role, Jordan has a best ever chance of rising above the bulk of the teams on the grid. Though Honda will measure success against BAR, Eddie Jordan knows better than anyone that there is only one real barometer of success in Formula One.
We've never had a better chance. All the excuses have to stop. We must win convincingly, and we must also have a good chance at the championship. How long that'll take, I don't know. Hopefully as short as possible. But we're all upbeat, and you have to be upbeat because this is a business as much about psychology as it is anything else. There's a lot of very fine engineers who have made this car possible. But without any question, the key ingredient in all of this is the Works Honda engine. They are revered by everybody in our sport, as you well know, and for them to come with Jordan is probably shaking a few people aside and say maybe we have to look at Jordan this year.
For the drivers too, this is an important year. Outsiders will tend to judge their performances more critically simply because they have that Honda backing. Both of them know that they too simply have to deliver in 2001.
I came in when Jordan was really good in 99, end of 99, and unfortunately I started to race for them in 2000 with unreliable car, so it made my life a little bit difficult, not only for me but also for the team. We had a very disappointing season, but we have learned quite a lot from that and probably will be much better this year.
With or without factory Honda engines, there's always a period of uncertainty at this time of year. Pre-season tests don't mean very much at all, and the new car can really only be judged when things get serious in Australia.
I think we have got the potential, but we don't know if the car is going to be competitive or not until we don't really test, and especially until we don't get to the first race, we can't see if and how much we are competitive.
In a situation where Honda is effectively pitting two teams against each other, there's a huge pressure on the drivers. We have 4, says Honda, which means that Trulli and Frentzen now have to try and beat Villeneuve and Panis as well as each other. But the competitive edge is what Formula One is all about, and everybody, drivers included, is looking forward to the challenge of the coming season.
We managed to get Honda with us on board, and this is giving us a big boost, not only from the horsepower point of view, also from the moral point of view. It's given us motivation, and also we have to do a lot of work on the car to make it reliable. We have the new package together now, and we're looking forward for the next season, yeah.
Of course, it won't just be about engines this year, and though most attention is focused on the return of traction control, the aerodynamic changes imposed by new regulations will have far more effect on performance.
To be fair, I have to say, when you have such a rule change, or big rule changes like we have now from 2000 to 2001, teams with a lot of experience in wind tunnel activities, there always are steps ahead to the average Formula One teams. That's why I would say McLaren and Ferrari will be still the team in the lead. But we have also spent so much money in developing the car in the wind tunnel, more than we have done in the past. So hopefully we are closing up the gap.
There is the David and Goliath sort of thing here, and I think that attracts a lot of people's attention. Let's hope Jordan can win the races that we think we're going to win, because as I said, Honda, instead of going and doing their own team, they've chosen us, and big obligation on Jordan now to deliver, because we don't want to let their ambitions down.
It's hard to believe that Honda will want to maintain a full works relationship with two teams on a long-term basis. But that's the sort of cutthroat situation on which Formula One has always thrived, and whichever way it works out, it appears that Honda is the only member of this technological ménage à trois who cannot lose. After a year of hype which delivered no results worth mentioning, Jaguar starts its second season in green under a new leadership in the shape of Bobby Rahal, ex-racer turned manager, the man on whom Ford, top brass, have pinned all their hopes. If the Stewart team hadn't enjoyed such a good year in '99, maybe 2000 wouldn't have been such a disappointment for Jaguar. But the R1 was overcomplicated and cursed with an inherent underfloor problem that bestowed upon it a malignant mid-corner instability. That, say the design team, now led by John Russell, is no longer a feature of its successor, although there's not much that's been radically changed. Though the R2 is all new from the ground up, apart from the odd component, it's neither groundbreaking nor earth-shattering, according to the team, but rather a much-needed exercise in going back to basics.
There were some quite well-founded, I think, concepts in R1 which just didn't translate to what they should have done. And we've taken a hard look at the whole concept and gone back to first principles on some aspects, but enhanced what were very good basic principle designs in R1 and improved those details. So it's a sort of combination of those things and trying to bring the best out of both and also out of the team.
The aim now is reliability and to compete in the group which last year comprised Jordan, BAR and Benetton and aspire to challenging Williams.
The rear suspension is completely different and quite challenging in some areas. There were some technical challenges to overcome with it, which we achieved very well. The structural requirements in the chassis this year also required good detail design, good thought, and also some new methods which we've enhanced. So that while it appears sort of fairly mundane on the outside, I think under the skin it's a solid and good practical package.
There are no magic bullet solutions, says new boss Bobby Rahal, claiming his goal for this season is merely to achieve respectability in an ever-changing world.
Seven-speed gearbox instead of six, which is going to be an advantage, no question. I think, of course, aero rules for everybody are different, so that'll have a big effect. Rear suspension is more conventional, I would say. Certainly far more, there's far greater ability to develop it than what we had, I think. Probably most importantly, Michelin tires, which is going to have a huge effect on the performance of our team or any team. I mean, the tire war will, as I say, could visibly alter the look of each grid on each given weekend. So that'll be an interesting variable at work during the year. But for the most part, I think the car represents just good, solid thought.
Rahal, Russell and new technical director Steve Nichols all arrived after the design of the R2 had been settled, and the new broom continues its sweep through the driver lineup as well. The departing Johnny Herbert replaced by Luciano Berti.
He has to do his own thing, I'll do mine, but in the end we have to both to work for the team and help Jaguar to succeed. So I'm pretty sure we're gonna work well together because I think we have the same mentality. We are professionals, and then when the race is over, we have our own style, and that's it. We just want to work well together, and that's it. I think the team has a better chance of having good results this year than what it had last year. The car looks to be a lot stronger. Of course, it's too soon to say anything because we don't know how we compare against the other teams yet. But I'm pretty confident for the season, and hopefully we can achieve the results that we want.
Everything at the launch was very low-key and understated, which could be taken as a tacit acknowledgement that last year's 9th place in the Constructors' Championship was hardly a respectable result for Jaguar. Any more than 13th in the drivers' table was the kind of position that Eddie Irvine had wanted for himself.
Whenever you have a problem like the clutch problem we had, with the engine problem we had, we didn't have the infrastructure to sort it out quick enough. And you know, initially we were on the pace, and then we gradually dropped off the pace as we're trying to solve these other problems. And then when we solved them, we then took a while to up the performance again, which you've seen at the last 2 races of the year. So it wasn't surprising. When you're in the inside, it wasn't surprising what really happened, you know.
That infrastructure is now in place, and the team has settled in for a long, hard slog as they prepare to climb the Formula One mountain slowly, talking in terms very similar to those in which BMW expressed itself ahead of its first season, perhaps because Bobby Rahal regards the R2 as the first real Jaguar.
Ferrari may be celebrating their title success, but BMW Williams has reasons to celebrate too. The team finished third in the Constructors' Championship this year, which is probably a great deal more than they'd hoped for or expected in the first year of the new partnership. When they launched the new car in January, they did so knowing that engine tests hadn't gone as well as they would have liked. There were problems with the oil pressure and generally just not enough power from an engine widely rumoured to be overweight at a time when other engines were shedding kilos like anorexic supermodels. But progress was rapid, and by the time they arrived in Melbourne, they were on the pace and reliable, and collected an impressive podium place. The car continued to improve all through the season, and the whole of the team seemed to find inspiration from the successes of both their drivers, Ralph in his second year with Williams, and the rookie Jenson Button in his first season as a Grand Prix driver of any kind. There were still the expected problems along the way, but overall this looked like a learning curve that was not as steep as most people had expected it to be.
Well, I think 99 was already a little bit better than expected, by luck I think, but obviously the season 2000 worked out a lot better than everybody expected, due to a new engine and even due to a car which hasn't been very successful and good in 99, but all of a sudden I think we found our way back, and the whole package together proved to be better than expected.
BMW entered Formula One with no illusions, knowing that they had a lot to catch up with the likes of Mercedes and Ferrari. This year they were the best of the rest, and that level of first-year performance has to bode well for next seasons, when BMW will be up to race pace and down to fighting weight.
We could have a very successful year if we continue working in the direction we have been this year. I'm sure the plan is to be closer to the top two teams. If not being able to win 1 or 2 races, that'd be great. That would be our target for next year.
After a long period in the wilderness, Williams may now be back on track towards recapturing the championship-winning form that made them one of the most successful teams in the paddock. But they're not expecting too much from next year.
Personal aim is obviously to win the World Championship with Williams together. That's why I've gone there. But I mean, to reach that aim or goal, I think that's, you know, it's still far ahead of us, and we have to work very hard to reach that.
Next year, the car will be stronger still, but Ralph has already said that he thinks letting Jenson Button go was a mistake, no matter how classy or fast Juan Pablo Montoya turns out to be, and the team as a whole may be less effective than it could have been.
One of the minority who chose to launch with more razz than the rest was BAR, whose planned unveiling of its new car in Shoreditch was disrupted by an unscheduled disruption to the car in Jerez when a wheel came off as Jacques Villeneuve was putting it through its paces alongside last year's version. It was a particular disappointment for the team because the crash happened on day 2 of the test, and Villeneuve had been concerned about the new car's lack of pace compared to last year's. more perhaps than should have been attributed to the increase in lap times due to the new regulations. This is a vital year for BAR, who now share the Honda engine with Jordan and are therefore bound to come under pressure to perform at a similar level. And although they pipped Jordan to 5th in the Constructors' Championship last season, there's every reason to regard last year as being just a blip on the Jordan graph. Honda says it will pursue a policy of neutrality between the two teams, even though BAR has a deeper arrangement concerning chassis and engine integration than Jordan. But of course that's only this season, and it may be fair to assume that next year Honda will favour the best performing of its two teams.
Well, it's relatively fair, but I wouldn't say we're looking for affection. What we're trying to do is do the best job possible for our partner Honda, but we shouldn't be worried about Jordan. What we have to do is be worried about the Williams, McLaren and Ferrari, because that's the way we've got to go.
Of course, there's more than one axe being ground within the team, and 97 world champion Jacques Villeneuve may be regretting his commitment to a team which so far has failed to provide him with a car that can match his ability.
Well, the aspirations are to fight for race wins and for a good place in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship, definitely. But race wins would be the ultimate goal this year.
BAR is another team with one new driver in its lineup for the coming season, as Ricardo Zonta is replaced by the more experienced Olivier Panis.
I'm very happy to work with Craig and Jack and all the people inside the factory. And very impressed about the car, last year car, and we work now for the new one, but I'm very positive for this season.
Drivers within a team are inevitably compared with each other, and for Panis that means he must try to match the undoubted abilities of a former world champion.
I'm very pleased to work with Jacques because I'm sure he win the championship one time. He's a really quick driver, very enjoy, and I think so if we work together we'll make a very good job for the team.
Later on this year, the teams will be allowed traction control, but is it really going to be the great equaliser between drivers that so many people seem to expect it could become, especially in poor weather?
A good driver stays a good driver. It's just a different kind of driving, different way to set the car up. It's more difficult to feel what's really happening with the car. But on the other hand, if it cannot be controlled, it's better to have it legal. And it takes away the fact that maybe there's teams cheating, nobody knows. So it's better if it's just legal. It's the same for everybody.
And while success or failure on the racetrack might decide the outcome of more than one rivalry within the team, this could be a nail-biting start to the year for some.
I'm always optimistic. I know we've done quite a lot of good development on the car. We're quite enthusiastic about our rate of progress. You can never always tell what the opposition have been doing. So we're all in anticipation of the first race or the first good benchmarking, but quietly confident.
Jacques Villeneuve says BAR needs to finish third in the Constructors' Championship this year, and that means there must be consistency from Melbourne onwards.
Can't wait. It's been a very, very long winter, and all we want now is to get on the grid in Melbourne.
After 2 years struggling to deliver the performance they promised from day one, the team knows this season may decide more than just a world championship. Probably the most eagerly awaited unveiling of the pre-season period took place here in the damp mists of northern Italy at the Fiorano test track. In front of an audience in which 500 specially invited members of the worldwide Ferrari club, the Tifosi, just about outnumbered the world press, Michael Schumacher, Rubens Barrichello and a still injured Luca Badoer took the covers off the F2001. Later on, this was described as the best Ferrari ever made, but right now, it was looking like the prettiest. Regulation changes have meant different approaches to front wing design. Jordan's boxy anhedral was the first to be seen like that, but Jaguar has a similar design that wasn't shown at their launch. The Williams we saw earlier looked fairly conventional, but the long swooping nose cone of the new Ferrari is certainly different. Reminiscent of the first Jordan in many ways, it may not be the nose and wing arrangement the team plans to race with. Certainly, the flat-bottomed rear gave away nothing about this season's diffuser, except that the team didn't want it to be seen by anyone else at this stage of the game, and the same may well be true of the front. Even though that first race at Melbourne is nearly upon us, there's still enough time for other teams to replicate good ideas, so all the launches involve an element of secrecy to a greater or lesser degree. And none of us will know who's got the sums, make that the computational fluid dynamics right until we get to that first race.
But you don't know what to expect. I mean, the new car looks good, but I don't really know what to expect when you go back and drive. So if you say from the 2000 car, what would I ask a little bit more? I would ask for a little bit more traction. That's at the end of the tires tint, you would suffer a little bit, but I think they done a good job on the rear suspension to improve that.
But at this launch, the team got even more attention than the car. The team being the drivers and the key people who design the car and work out the race strategies.
It's a strong group to stay together. It's a group which I hope stay together for many more years. We succeed and fail together, and one of the great things about the modern day Ferrari team for me is that if we do have a problem, the team gets stronger, it doesn't get weaker.
It may be hard to avoid the feeling that this car was designed around Michael Schumacher, but so far he knows less about it than many others.
I've been able to sit in the car to get a little bit of a feeling how is the seat and all this, the pedals, steering position. But the feeling is certainly different to when you see the car the first time with all the stickers on, with all things together, in the specific light it's been put in. It's specific and special. See the number 1 on it, it's great.
There has been speculation that the team might split now that the title monkey has been removed, but there seemed little chance of that today at the launch.
Part of my responsibility and of Montezemolo's responsibility is to think about the future for Ferrari. So I've been thinking, discussing a lot about the after 2001 for Ferrari. Obviously, we have a very strong team, which works very well together. The spirit is absolutely outstanding, and it would be a shame not to try to keep the same people at the same place.
There has also been talk that Michael Schumacher might leave at the end of his contract, title success now having removed the target of his ambitions.
Certainly, a lot of people may feel now I've won my main goal, that my motivation is less and I'm not so concerned anymore, but really I'm just born for that. I mean, I'm natural. I just go in the car and I want to be on the limit. I want to do it as good as I can, and it's simply a lot of joy for me still. I just feel that the extra pressure has gone, and then I feel as motivated as ever, and our target is very clear. We do the job for it, and then in the end we have to see whether that's good enough or not. As simple as this.
Another regulation change this year will be the return of traction control, a situation in which it seems Michael Schumacher has most to lose.
I see that slightly different because I don't see much changing. I give you one example, and I've made this quite often now. It's 91 Patrese and Nigel Mansell in non-active days, non-traction control days. Patrese was as fast as Nigel, being able to beat him several times. And in 92, that was history. Nigel was just off with traction control, with active suspension, all that. So I see the way that with the electronics you can put the car even more to the limit, and not everybody can use that. I prefer it, honestly. I want the car consistently on the limit, and I like any electronics which give me that help, and therefore I'm pretty happy and looking forward to it.
Like Schumacher, the whole team was confident and aggressive, and that seemed to be the mood of the launch. Come and get us if you think you're hard enough. Under new but old management, with factory Renault power and Formula One's latest wunderkind, Benetton might have the right formula to bring the glory days back to Enstone once again. After a brief spell in the garden at home, Mike Gascoigne may have arrived at Benetton too late to have been a big influence on this year's car, although its unveiling was always scheduled to be one of the last, which might have given him enough time in the team's new home-based wind tunnel to add his own influences. The car may well share the anhedral shape of the front wings seen on Jaguar and Jordan, and there are rumours of a new airbox layout, but it's not only the designers who've been working hard over the winter break. This year's Formula One wunderkind is, of course, Jenson Button, widely acknowledged to have made the most impressive debut since Schumacher himself, and now making public his ambition to take the #1 plate to Williams in 2003 when his 2-year Benetton secondment comes to an end. It's quite a show of confidence even from Button, who celebrated his 21st birthday last week. But he has good cause to be so upbeat after such a brilliant debut season, and as you can see, he's already working hard on the next.
It's been great. We've done a lot of training. We did a lot of cycling off-road and on-road, a lot of running, and also some work in the gym, some weights and stuff, and it's been great. It really has. A lot more than I've ever worked out before, but it's really helping, I think, and I'm going to keep it up throughout the season as much as I can.
Button knows he has to work hard because this year he's no longer a rookie and just can't rely on the thrill of those astonishing first-time performances in places like Spa and Suzuka. He has to perform everywhere he goes.
It is very tough, and I found that last year in some of the long races. You feel it on your neck quite a bit, but not just that, you feel it on your arms, your hands, cardiovascularly. The last 10 laps you can start feeling slightly tired, and I think if you can smooth that out, keep the same fitness throughout the race, it's definitely an improvement. Also your reactions are going to be better when you're fitter, and mentally you're a lot stronger in the head.
Okay then, stand by, go! Come on in, up and off, leading leg, that's the way, step out to the side, that's it, on and then a step off. Come on, let's push it out, step sideways, we're going sideways, good, keep it going, wrong foot, other foot, let's go, push, stepping on and stepping off, stepping on, stepping off. You got your last 5 seconds coming up, hanging in there, keep it going, and stop, change, next exercise.
It's very difficult to know what to tell people about the G-force in a Formula One car, but it's 5 Gs we pull on braking, which is pretty tough. I think any normal person off the street would have big problems even doing 1 lap in an F1 car, because it's such a different thing than you normally feel in a road car or anything like that, any sport. So we do a lot of work on the neck, putting up our necks, and also for the fast corners as well.
Button is paired with Italian Giancarlo Fisichella, but he's not the only new boy on the team this year. Australian Mark Webber has signed on too as a test driver.
2001 is very exciting for me because it's my first year really being associated with a heavy program as such with Formula One, so I'm really looking forward to it, obviously with Renault and Benetton working together, and you can really see how it's all growing very quickly, even at the stages since I've been with the team. So it's really good, and the whole season I'm looking forward to working with the team and testing and developing and taking the load off Jenson and Giancarlo when I can.
If Jenson Button was really serious in what he said about being a title contender next season, then he needs to be very much on the pace this year, and he needs to be consistent with it.
Expectations for 2001 is going to be hopefully good finishes, obviously, and hopefully some podiums, I think. I think podiums is what I'm looking forward to next year, but also it's still getting mileage under my belt throughout the year. I can't make any mistakes next year, obviously. I know all the circuits. I'm a lot more experienced than last year, so yeah, podiums, I think.
There's more training ahead between now and the first race in Australia, when we'll get our first clues about what to expect this season. The new McLaren, one of the last cars to be shown before the testing war reached white heat, was exactly as billed, new. McLaren were juggling the difference between extra time in R&D or extra time on the test track, and that's a balancing act you can never judge in advance. Only hindsight will tell if it was right to delay the launch.
On behalf of West McLaren Mercedes, a very warm welcome to you all here this morning at Valencia for the launch of the new West McLaren Mercedes MP4 16, the team's challenger for the 2001 season. And I ask you now to unveil the new West McLaren Mercedes MP4 16.
All through a season in which the team was locked in combat with Ferrari for the titles, it was also busy preparing a completely new car for this year, a new car called for because of new rules. And now the team must hope that they've got everything right, or at least as right as everyone else has.
How competitive we will be against our competition just remains to be seen. But it's at the moment, you know, logic says, you know, we can't make them faster or slower. They're looking after their own destiny, and that's what we're doing. The answer to how well anybody's done will start to unfold in Melbourne, but probably be 2 or 3 races before you can really see who's done the best job.
The driver lineup has stayed the same, and David Coulthard once again starts the season hoping to prove he can beat Mika Häkkinen and the rest.
I'm looking forward to the season. A new year, new regulations, fresh battle against our opposition. Obviously, none of us know at this point just who's going to be the team and who's going to be the ones that are chasing, but we've driven a little bit, or I've driven a couple of days in the new car already, and it feels very promising, so looking forward to Melbourne.
The longest-serving partnership in Formula One is viewed from the outside as a one-sided affair, but from the inside, it remains a working relationship.
Obviously, the best way for us to have a chance of victory is to work together, and Mika and I are well aware of how to do that. So I believe that we have a very strong pairing. You know, that every team will want to say they have the best driver pairing in Formula One. I think the facts show that McLaren have the best driver pairing, so we'll go develop the car, do the best we can, and then try and beat each other.
2 world titles mark the high spots of Häkkinen's 10 years in this sport, years which have understandably dimmed the gloss.
Time when I was very first time in Formula One and when I'm today, of course the excitement is a little bit less because it's not so many new things anymore. You know, everything is more or less routine and you are more experienced. But there is still you know, the feeling of racing and feeling of winning, what is really burning inside you.
With all the changes and variables which have been introduced this year, the first few months are likely to see a period of rapid development, both by the tyre manufacturers and then again on individual aerodynamic pieces.
As a team and as a company, I would say you could categorise us as being pretty damn hard working, and that hard work very often reflects in long hours. But to be in Formula One and get what you want out of it as an employee, you have to be passionate about Formula One, and it's normally the passion that balances off the downside that's associated with the long hours.
Someone else who will be putting in some long hours this season is new boy Alex Wurz, the lanky Austrian now on the strength in the capacity of third driver, insists Ron Dennis, and not test driver. But this is where he'll be doing most of his work this year, pounding round empty circuits, testing pieces that have been produced by the 24-hour working day at Woking, racking up more seat miles than most full-time race drivers in the quest for perfection. At the moment, he's been testing a hybrid, but as production gets into gear, he'll be getting one of these. The MP416 may look a lot like last year's car, say the team, but because of changes forced on them by the rules, it's a clean sheet design. though there are some carryovers in terms of items like the gearbox. But with a front wing that's 2 inches higher off the ground than before to meet the new rules, side pods that are longer to meet new crash test rigs, a stronger roll hoop for the same reason, and some fairly severe limitations on rear wing design, restricting it to 3 elements and forcing the lowest element even lower than before, the new car simply has to look different. Like everyone else, McLaren has been working to claw back the losses the new rules have deliberately induced through the aerodynamic changes, and though they can measure their own pace against last year's car, even against last year's car with this year's engine, because Mercedes and Ilmor have been busy through the winter as well, but what McLaren cannot know is how well they have done compared to the rest of the grid. But make no mistake, the race season has already started, and even these few demonstration laps at Valencia are probably part of McLaren's strategy for the coming year. How quick is this car? Is it faster than we can see here? Will it come out of the trap in Melbourne and disappear up the road? And most important of all, has it got race-long reliability? Probably the best news Sauber could hope for would be to run last year's title-winning Ferrari engine, but what's been making the headlines in the run-up to the season was not the continuance of that deal, but Peter Sauber's choice of drivers. And the headline maker there has been not the acquisition of Nick Heidfeld from Ferrari's other customer team, Prost, but the arrival of a young driver almost totally untried in the single-seat market. A kart racer of some experience and repute, he drove the Formula Renault Winter Series in 1999 and won it, and then did the same again in last summer's full-on championship, earning himself a Sauber test in the process. After bypassing the traditional ladder of success, as climbed even by the controversial Jenson Button, the 21-year-old Finn stepped straight into the test season with considerable confidence and demonstrated a fairly obvious talent. Whether or not he will do well in this car remains to be seen. The weight of opinion seems to be that he may well have benefited from an older teammate to guide him through the pressure of race weekends and the perhaps more difficult role of developing the car throughout the season. And that, let us not forget, has been Sauber's primary failing in recent years, an inability to capitalise on early pace, which Raikkonen's teammate may be able to rectify. 23-year-old Nick Heidfeld had a good season in Formula 3000 and a less successful one in Formula 1 with Prost, for which you may rightly blame the car. And he could well be a surprise here in a German-speaking team.
So far, it's looking good. Definitely, we will not be world champion by the end of the season, but you have to try to achieve the best.
Things are looking so good that Heidfeld has set his sights for the season very high indeed.
I hope to go in the points plenty of times. So far, I have not 1 point from the last season, but we will see if it's possible or not.
His teammate attracted considerably more controversy, not least because he didn't have a super licence, but Kimi Raikkonen has got one now.
I'm learning all the time still. I think so you're always learning when you go in a car and just can get faster. And yeah, I just need to get more mileage and I'm learning.
Like his new teammate, Raikkonen has high hopes for the coming season, maybe too high.
I just wish that I will get some points this year and just do my best all the time and finish the races.
Listening to that, you can't tell he's on a 4-race FIA probation and may lose his super licence if he doesn't perform at an acceptable level.
Only a few days after Ferrari launched the F2001, world champion Michael Schumacher has given it unsurprisingly the thumbs up after setting a record-shattering pace. At Fiorano, Ferrari's own private test track just behind the factory at Maranello, the new car was run for the first time completely in its 2001 form. This was the first time for Schumi to be in a car since his operation to remove the metalwork from his leg at the end of last year, and therefore his first experience of the car. Most of the top brass were there at possibly the most important day of this year so far. With a championship to defend, they have been busy. Their wind tunnel in full stride, subtle changes to the aerodynamics have been made, but more full-on and visible differences to the nose are unmissable, but not restrictive if change was needed. The Ferrari engine has always been a powerful one, and now the new 050 has a new and lighter and yet much stronger construction, important for the design implications of the car, and in that ballast weight can be added where it's needed to bring the car up to its minimum FIA requirement. The original plan was to run a few installation laps in the morning and then the main bulk of the runs in the afternoon. Schumacher took the car out of the box and it seemed didn't want to put it back in again. Within the first few laps, he scythed 8/10 off the record for the track set last year by the Marque's currently injured test driver Luca Badoer. Schumacher was back, and Schumacher was most definitely smiling.
I mean, first of all, what turns out is that the car out of the garage, as we expected, runs very well, very competitive. The time's looking very good because we have obviously already the new tyres here, which quite a bit faster than previous year's tyres. On the other side, the car is handling very well. I'm very happy with the way it works. And not only that, it is so far quite reliable. I mean, we're doing plenty of laps and we don't have any particular problems so far. So we're very good straight out of the box, and that's a very good sign for a new car.
They ran the F2001 for 68 laps and without any mechanical problems reported. There are not many teams that have managed to do that so far this year.
Obviously, we're doing these kind of 5 time-lap runs in order to get mileage into the car, make some little setup changes, see how is the reaction of the car, and see if we find any kind of problems, which sure they will come, because non-problem will not be possible in a Formula 1 car, which is basically a complete prototype. But this is the momentarily program.
Changes to the suspension geometry have been made to improve tyre wear that caused a problem last year. This and many other changes have helped to improve the car and to give far better handling. After waiting for so long to have the title back in their camp, they are not going to let it go again so easily. They intend to be the team to beat, and they plan on having other cars in their mirrors rather than being an image in someone else's.
After a winter of rumour, the stories about the future of F1 grew in size and variety, so that in the weeks running up to the first race, there were constant hints that something was afoot, and the power base on which the sport rests was on the brink of fundamental change.
Well, I have a detailed understanding of everything that's going on. I'm participating in the process. Because of that knowledge, it's just inappropriate for me to make a comment about it. The only thing I would say is that most of what I see written in the media is normally several weeks out of date and very often not accurate.
Rumour Control said a group of motor manufacturers was poised to buy out Bernie Ecclestone, but the details were the subject of speculation.
Whilst I know everybody is hungry to find information about this subject, nobody's been particularly successful at it, and I think what is in the public domain is quite a long way from the truth. Having said that, I don't know of anybody who is involved in this process that doesn't have one common objective, which is to stabilise the long-term interests of Formula One. Obviously, people have different ways of doing that. Sometimes they're a little self-fulfilling, but the motive, primary motive that's there is to make Formula One stable, and so nobody is really trying to do something destructive. So I think the outcome, it will be quite a few months before there's any real outcome to it, but I can't see in the long term, I really can't see it destabilising Formula One.
With a link to Mercedes that's longer and stronger than anything except perhaps the Fiat Ferrari loop, Ron Dennis is one of several key people whose name has been linked to overall control of Formula One if Bernie Ecclestone should ever decide to retire. And though the Sport Supremo himself is keen to see the deal go through as quickly as possible, retirement has never really been very high on Bernie's list of priorities, although we all know from reading the Sunday papers that his pension fund is clearly very substantial.